Yes, Kunjalata Brahman ma'am, I think we can start the program.
Yes. Should we wait for the ACLA secretary to join us, sir?
No ma'am, please kindly continue because he is having some network problem. So if he joined, then we can take his views. Otherwise, I will continue, ma'am.
Okay then, yes. All right, sir. A very warm good afternoon to one and all present this very sunny afternoon. I, on behalf of the Department of Political Science and English, would like to welcome one and all to this August gathering of the new normal digital platform. Before we begin with our lecture, I would like to reiterate that this being our very first initiative for the Golden Jubilee year of Lalit Chandra Bharali College, we are, since physically is not physically doing something and physically being present there in the college itself is going to be a lot of problem, and in the near future this is going to be the new normal that we all are practicing. This being our first initiative on the digital platform, we are trying to acclimatize ourselves to this very mode of working. Before we get on to our lecture program, I would like to request our principal, sir, Dr. Edison Ali, to deliver his inaugural speech for today. Sir? Unmute korok, sir. Sir, unmute.
Principal sir, unmute yourself,
yeah.
please.
Okay.
Yes,
okay.
yes, sir, yes.
Yeah. Good afternoon and a warm welcome to the first initiative of our college's Golden Jubilee initiative on this digital platform, which has become a new normal necessitated by the ongoing pandemic. It is a privilege to welcome Professor Hendik to this August platform to deliver and listen to his views on the new education policy. The National Education Policy 2020 was approved by the Union Cabinet of India on 29 July 2020, outlines and introduces the vision of India's new education system, which is believed to be holistic and more student-oriented. The new policy will be trying to replace the previous national policy on education of 1986. The policy is a comprehensive framework for elementary education to higher education, as well as vocational training across India. This policy aims to transform and refurbish India's education system by 2040. What else the new education policy seeks to sense and bring about all the spoken in length by our resource person for today, Professor Rajiv Hendik. With these few words, I conclude my inaugural speech. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your inspiring words. I would now like to request the IQAC coordinator of LC Bharali College, Dr. Diba Borua, to speak a few words. Unmute yourself, Baido.
Okay, a very good afternoon to all our esteemed participants. Have I unmuted? I mean, am I audible?
Yes, yes, absolutely.
Okay. Now, on behalf of the IQAC and the Departments of English and Political Science, I welcome everyone. Now, first of all, I would like to welcome our esteemed resource person of this webinar, Professor Rajiv Hendik, who was very generous in giving us his consent despite his demanding calendar. In the same breath, I also welcome all the faculty members from different colleges, research scholars, and students for being a part of this very interesting webinar. As we all know, the new education policy of 2020 is underpinned by a wholly new dimension where the emphasis is on multidisciplinarity and a holistic education across the streams for a multidisciplinary world. in order to ensure the unity and integrity of all knowledge. We have with us today Professor Hendik, who wields considerable expertise in this knowledge domain. I am very sure that Professor Hendik's discourse would provide elucidation of the various aspects of the new education policy. Thank you.
Thank you, Deepa Baido, for your encouraging words. I would now like to call upon Dr. Birendra Pal, the Secretary, ICT Cell, Assam College Librarian Association, to kindly address the gathering. Sir.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Kunjalata Brahma, ma'am. It's a great honor for me to represent ACLA, ICT Cell on this platform. And this is the 148 number of webinar we have been organizing. And today, again, we are going to complete 150 webinar at DHSK Commerce College. So it's a great honor for us also. And with LCB College, we have a very good and very strong academic relations during the last 1 month we have seen, because we have organized already 4 and 5 webinars under the dynamic initiative of IQAC along with all the college team. So this is really very important, and the topic that has been chosen today is really very important regarding the new education policy 2020 and the higher education in Assam. And it is very pertinent topic to be discussed, which is organized by the Department of Political Science and the English in collaboration with the Assam College Librarians Association ICT Cell. And basically Assam College Librarians Association, as you know, is a premier institution of Assam along with covering the Northeast India. And during this pandemic situation, we have started few movements regarding the e-resource movement first. And we have provided some of the awareness programs like on ICT initiatives of MHRD Government of India, like Swayam Prabha. Then we have provided National Digital Library, then virtual labs, then Diksha applications, and many things. And then again, we have migrated to the technical support to the different colleges. And this is one of the output of this particular initiative that we have taken from the ACLA ICT Cell. And really, it's a very great honor for us. And again, we have received another honor from the Office of the Mission Director, RMSA, to prepare some educational videos for the school communities. So ACLA is working, trying hard for its providing the supports to the different academic fraternity. And during the pandemic situation, we have also learned many things during this, covering from Dhubri to Sadia, from Guwahati to Silchar. We have covered many colleges, and we have almost covered 200 colleges in the awareness program and more than 150 colleges in the technical support. So it's a great honor for us. And I wish this webinar would be a great success one, because I have seen more than 220 participants have already joined this program, and the program is live on the Facebook also. So I'm going to share the Zoom ID and password in the Facebook page also, and everybody is welcome in this program. With this, again, I would like to thank the LCB College team for organizing this program in a very systematic way. Thank you, and over to Kunjalata Brahman. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, sir. Before we move on to our lecture series, I would like to introduce our resource person for this afternoon. We have amidst us a very, very renowned and an established academician, Professor Rajiv Hendik. Professor Rajiv Hendik has carved out a niche for himself in the academic world, whose words and discourses are often taken very, very seriously. Professor Hendik is presently a professor and the head Department of History, Guwahati University, Assam. A gold medalist in history, Professor Hendik was the recipient of the S.K. Bhuyan Memorial Award of Guwahati University. Professor Hendik has taught at the Manohari Devi Kanoi Girls College, Dibrugarh, and Dibrugarh University before joining Guwahati University as a professor in 2013. He had also served Dibrugarh University as Deputy Registrar Academic for 9 years from 2000 to 2009. Sir was associated with social welfare activities as well as the National Service Scheme Program Coordinator of Dibrugarh University for more than 5 years, and also with sports as the treasurer of the Dibrugarh University Sports Board. He was also a member of the state level advisory committee for students and youth welfare, Government of Assam from 2013 to 15. Currently, Professor Hendik is a member of several important academic bodies, both within and outside Assam, and is presently the president of the governing body of Midnapur College, established 1873, one of the leading autonomous colleges of West Bengal. Professor Hendik did his PhD on forest history of Assam, and his book, British Forest Policy of in Assam is a pioneering book on that area. He was a Rotary Peace Scholar in 2006 and a recipient of the Charles Wallace Research Grant administered by the British Council in 2011. He has a number of publications to his credit. A list that will go on and on. I have tried to sum him up in as much less words as possible. So, Sir Professor Hendig, welcome, heartiest welcome to you. And you will to deliver, you are here to deliver on the policies, issues, and whatever the new education policy seeks to establish. So, sir, the platform is all yours.
Namaskar, good afternoon. I hope I am audible to all of you.
Yes, yes, absolutely.
In case there is some problem, please point me out. I have my mobile also by my side because sometimes it betrays the network I am using. If it betrays, then I will have to shift to some other network. Anyway, it's a great privilege, and thank you for the I think a rather glorifying introduction by Kunjalata Brahma Bathari. Dr. Edition Ali, Principal of Lolit Chandra Bharali College, Dr. Diba Borua Baido, Dibakor Das, Kunjalata Brahma Bathari, members of ACLA, esteemed teachers of both LCB College and other faculty members from different colleges who have joined this webinar, scholars and students who are there using different devices and over different networks. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. Thanks for the invitation. New education policy, or the national education policy rather, 2020, and higher education in Assam is indeed a very daunting topic, I must say, because I know I am speaking to a group of persons who are in one way or other involved with higher education, and maybe most of us are from Assam, so the situation here is a bit different. And I understand that there are a lot of people actually, including the principal, Dr. Ali, who
Pardon? Are you asking something?
hello?
Yeah. Hendik sir,
Yes?
are you asking something?
No.
And
No.
okay. Okay.
So the topic is actually very relevant, and there is much discussion already done, and you can get a lot of discussion on it on different media, which also includes the social media. I will try to highlight some of the salient features of the new education policy, and then discuss the possible implications that this policy has on Assam in particular. And overall, I'll try to bring in topics as I go along. So there have been actually, as a person from a history background, I normally look at things from a long-term perspective, and recommendations, commissions, committees on the education, especially national education policies. There are many. There have been policies, there have been acts, there have been regulations, there has been schemes, especially through the 5-year plans, which had reflected on education and which had reflected also on the need for transformation of the education system that we are having today. So as a matter of fact, the entire education system that we have been part of is a colonial legacy. And there has been attempt from very early on after independence to somehow, you can say, unlock ourselves from that situation, maybe try to do away with the colonial legacy with the best of efforts, but whether you call it institutionally or as a process of education, we have not been able to totally free ourselves from that. And it seems that sometimes we tend to copy some other, uh, I should say, structure or other processes from elsewhere, and then try to replicate the same in the Indian scenario. So going back, actually, there is a report of the University Grants Commission of December 1948 to August 1949. That was the first, you can say, a sort of report that we have, which tried to look at the education that we are having. It's a hefty document of around 700 pages, and Sarvapalli Radhakrishnan was the chairman of that committee. Zakir Hussain was there. There were a lot of luminaries, you can say, who were there, and this is something that we can have a look at. And ultimately, we know that university grants
Don't talk. I unmuted myself. Network.
hello. Yeah,
I think there were some network issues.
there is. So basically, uh, aspirational standards are different, and the reality is different. We are trying to, so to say, uh, use a medium for which we are not adequately equipped, and this is something actually we are all also learning to, you can say, adjust to it. Sometimes there is unstable network. Sometimes the network is gone, and I don't know actually where I left off. And I think I was with the Kothari Commission participants.
You were speaking.
You got muted now. Yeah.
University Grants Commission. You just spoke about that.
Okay. So we had the University Grants Commission Act, 1956, and then we have the D.S. Kothari Commission, which was a commission which went into the education system in India and which submitted a report, by studying it, by doing it a very, very grueling task, I should say, from 1964 to 66, it was the report. And then we have the National Education Policy 1968 under Indira Gandhi. There are a lot of why I'm saying this, why we need to speak about D.S. Kothari Commission is because of the fact that even the National Education Policy 2020, many of the recommendations which are there today, they were also, reflected. They were also part of that D.S. Kothari Commission recommendations. So in a way, what I'm trying to say is that we have a long legacy of trying to come out of what the colonialist gave to us. And today in 2020, in the 21st century, we are actually coming up with a policy which actually in a way reflects what we have done so far. So very, very briefly, I'm just trying to give you a sort of history of these education policies. In 68, what did it primarily do? It tried to restructure the entire education system. The 10 plus 2 plus 3 system, which we are even running on today, 10 plus 2 plus 3 is a legacy of the National Education Policy 1968. But let me also tell you that we are also continuing with a lot of things which the Kothari Commission actually, or the National Education Policy itself, did not tell us to continue with. And the most important part of that is the 10 plus 2 level, which is there in the colleges. So this is another legacy. It's a baggage which we have been carrying. in spite of the fact that, way back in the late 1960s, we were told that we should actually prepare ourselves to delink the 10+2 level from our colleges. Anyway, after that, we had the National Education Policy of 1986. Rajiv Gandhi was the prime minister then. And this policy stressed on equity, access, quality, affordability, and accountability. Equity, access, quality, affordability, accountability. These are the same terms which are also again reflected in the 2020 policy and 2020, you can say, education policy. Then after that, we
Mm. I think there are some network issues, sir.
I like it because also of the fact that it contains very beautiful, there are very nice quotations from different great personalities who have spoken on education. So after that, you have the Yashpal Committee report, which again is a very important report because it particularly dealt with the higher education institutions. And this is a report which also told about, doing away with UGC, AICT and things like that. And this new education policy or National Education Policy 2020 is trying to do precisely that. So after that, again, we have the Right to Education Act 2009, the Right of Children to Free and Compulsory Education Act. That was the act actually, but it is more famously known as the Right to Education Act, RTE. So it's an act of the Parliament of India, which was enacted in 2009, and which describes the modalities of importance of free and compulsory education for children between 6 and 14 in India under Article 21 of the Indian Constitution. So as a matter of fact, this right to education will now be under the NEP 2020. The scope will be enlarged because earlier it was from 6.
Network issues হয়ে আছে, sir.
Okay. Sir, are you there? Professor Rajiv Handike, sir. Kindly make a call to sir. Yeah, he's disconnected.
I'll call him.
Yeah. So dear participants, don't worry, he'll be back within, I think, 1 minute.
লগ ইন কৰি লওক আৰু আচ্ছা ঠিক আছে দিয়ক হ'ব নেটৱৰ্ক ইছ্যুজ উপায় নাই দিয়ক he is joining, sir.
Okay, okay.
Network.
Back again. I don't know how many times it will.
Again. Tell him to switch off this video. Rajiv da, I think you can switch off your video and just speak. Yet the network seems to be fine at times. Ha, ठीक है sir. Okay.
Dear host, yeah, participant accept korbo na lage. I will accept everything from my part. Yeah, Rajiv, Mandike sir. Ma'am, I think better to join from mobile phone directly. That will be better.
Okay. মই তেওঁক আপোনাৰ ভিডিঅ'টো সুইচ অফ কৰিব কৈছো, তেতিয়া লিংকটো ঠিকে থাকে।
Yeah, sir is there now. Just I will unmute. Yes, sir. Please unmute yourself. Yes, sir. Please unmute yourself, Professor Rajiv Pandit.
Hello.
Yes, sir. I can hear you.
So I have switched off. The video.
Yes, that will be better, sir. The network should be fine then.
This is our own ZU network, and I am ready with another network actually.
Sir, I think better to connect with mobile phone, sir. Otherwise, it will break again, sir.
I think Birendra, you are right. You are right in saying that, and should I do that or I continue for some time?
Sir, I think better to connect directly with mobile phone. Let it be also, and the mobile should be backup, sir. Otherwise, sometimes there might be problems, sir.
Yeah,
Sir,
I am. I'm.
Yes, sir. I
Yeah.
just accept you, and I will make you again as co-host. Just join audio, sir.
Okay.
Make the co-host to you. Yes, sir. Please unmute yourself. Yes, sir. Can you hear me now, sir?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yes, sir. এটা কাম কৰিব পাৰে স্যাৰ, আপুনি ইয়াৰফোনটো খুলি পেলাই স্যাৰ আপুনি কম্পিউটাৰত কানেক্ট কৰি দিয়ক, মানে কি সাউন্ডটো ইকো হ'ব নহলে। আপোনাৰ ইয়াৰফোনটো কম্পিউটাৰত লগাই থৈ দিয়ক স্যাৰ, আৰু আপুনি মোবাইল ফোনৰ থ্ৰুদি কৈ থাকক স্যাৰ, ডাইৰেক্টলি কওক স্যাৰ।
Without using let me do one thing. Okay.
আপোনাৰ সাউন্ডটো ইকো হৈছে কাৰণ যে স্যাৰ দুটা ডিভাইস ইউজ হৈ আছে একেলগে, সেইটো কাৰণে সেইটো ডিভাইসৰ সাউন্ডটো ইকো ইয়াতে হৈ আছে স্যাৰ।
Okay. Sorry. Is it okay now?
স্যার আপনার ইয়ারফোনটো আপনার কম্পিউটাৰত কানেক্ট কৰি দিয়ক স্যার, আপনার ভিডিওটো অন কৰি দিয়ক স্যার, মোবাইলৰ ভিডিওটো অন কৰি দিয়ক স্যার।
সেইটো অফ হৈ আছে।
সেইটো অফ হৈ আছে নেকি? হয় স্যার, অন কৰি দিয়ক স্যার।
ওকে।
হয়, এতিয়া স্যার আপনার ইয়ারফোনটো স্যার আপনার কম্পিউটাৰত লগাই দিয়ক স্যার ডাইরেক্ট। আপনার ইয়ারফোনটো খুলি মোবাইলত নালাগে স্যার, ইয়ারফোন লগাবলৈ। তেতিয়া সেই সাউন্ডটো ইয়ারফোনত গুচি যাব, তেতিয়া আপুনি ডাইৰেক্টলি ক'ব পাৰিব মোবাইলৰ থ্ৰুদি।
Okay. Anyway, is it okay now?
Yeah, yeah. Now it's okay, sir.
Okay. Uh, so, I'm sorry for all the problem. In fact, what's happening is I am also hearing the echo. How I don't know how to do away with it.
Sir, actually, since you have two devices nearby, that is why the
Okay.
computer লগত আছে এইকাৰণে স্যার ইকো হৈ আছে
Okay.
আপনি কম্পিউটাৰটো স্যার দূৰত থৈ দিলে একো অসুবিধা নাই স্যার আপোনাৰ
Okay.
and mute your computer sir yeah I moved from this side
Goa.
yes no sir ভিডিওটো অন কৰিলে অসুবিধা নাই স্যার আপনার মোবাইলের নেটওয়ার্কটো ঠিকই আছে স্যার
Huh? Okay.
মোবাইলের ভিডিওটো অন করে দিয়ক স্যার আপনি
So anyway, so you can see me now.
your video is not coming sir
Why?
just start your video sir yeah it is coming now okay sir thank you sir now you can continue sir
Okay. I'm very sorry for the in a way technical glitch. I'm not to be blamed, of course, nor ACLA or LCP college are to be blamed. So I was talking about the history of the different policies. So I told about that we had a policy in 1968, we had a policy in 1986, we had the right to education policy, and then we also had a committee on corporate participation in higher education report. So that report was given by Narayana Murthy and in 2012. So anyway, the national education
again we lost the connection sir can you hear us
Virendra,
yes sir just unmute yourself sir unmute করে লোক স্যার এবার
I am using the mobile only now. Is it okay?
yeah it's okay sir now
I'm using the mobile only, so otherwise it's creating a lot of problem actually.
হয় হয় স্যার মাজতে যদি মোৰ প্ৰয়োজন পৰিলে মই আপোনাৰ ভিডিওটো মই ইয়াৰ পৰা অফ কৰি দিম স্যার
Okay.
হয় স্যার ঠিক আছে
Okay. Yeah, very unstable, everything is very unstable. So I was talking about this 2020 new education policy, which was passed and which got the cabinet approval on 29th of July. So what I was trying to say is that, is it a new education policy? I mean to say, what is new about it? I would say that it is new, but there are a lot of earlier recommendations which have come into it. And so if you look at it, there are a lot of things which have already been in a way experimented, already been done in India. And this new education policy, therefore, is not entirely new. So the history of the higher education in India in a way gets reflected here. So, but another thing is also we have to be very, very careful about, we have to understand is that policy is a policy. A policy is a policy. It is not a law. Policy is not a law. We have to understand that. And it's a loose commitment, very loose. And this National Education Policy 2020, it has to be followed up with different regulations, with different acts to put it into place. So for example, there is a talk of replacing UGC, AICT, NCT with a new body. Now to do that, the government will have to repeal the UGC, that is the University Grants Commission Act 1956. So there cannot be a new body with this UGC still in place. So in other words, the new education policy or the National Education Policy 2020, it causes a convergence of a lot of recommendations of the developments that we have already experienced so far into one document, and which is really commendable. And there are a lot of good things in it. And as I said, policy is a policy. So this policy is, you can say, it's a wish list. We can also say that this is a sort of maybe the aspirational standard of the entire nation. We are aspiring to have an education policy of this nature, of this, high quality, but we don't know whether we will succeed. And for that to succeed, it has to be followed up with different initiatives. And we also have to remember one thing, that the education policies that we had earlier were not entirely, implemented. For example, this new education policy 2020, it talks of allotting 6% of the GDP for education expenses in the country. Now, this is not a new recommendation. It was there. It was there in the Kotri Commission. It was there in the earlier education policies, but it has not become a reality. So the point is, this National Education Policy 2020, in spite of the very, very high ideals, lofty, you can say, objectives, needs to be followed up very carefully and diligently with a lot of political will to actually fructify into something which will really take the education system in our country forwards towards a new era in this 21st century. So let us examine a few important features of this National Education Policy before we move on. And our education policy is, of course, the topic of today's webinar is actually related to higher education. However, it won't be bad if we look at the entire system, and that is for obvious reason, because in this way or that way, we are all connected. School education is connected to secondary education, to higher education as a whole. And before we move on, we also need to understand what higher education actually means. Higher education, normally it is, we use the term higher education also because it is an education which takes place at a higher stage. So it is beyond 10 plus 2. So it is also it's an age which is, beyond 18 years. So we are, in fact, in a way, giving education to the adults. In a way, giving education to, in India's parlance, to the voters, because after 18, you are eligible to vote. So that is higher. And secondly, it is also higher because it is expected that in a higher education, the students, they engage with higher faculties like analysis and also matters related to abstraction. Students must be able to abstract. They have to deal with concepts. So that is why it is higher. So the questions like reasoning, intuition, perception, all these things, it has to develop and mature in higher education. So if you look at the key proposals of the new education policy, the most important in a ground level, it is the NEP proposes to change the school's academic structure from 10 plus 2 years of schooling format to 5 plus 3 plus 3 plus 4. I think you all know that. You all know that, and I'm not going to delineate too much on this because I think we have already discussed a lot about in different domains. These are there, what it will be done. You know, you will have a foundational stage, then you have a preparatory stage, primary school, middle school, and then secondary school. Now, for higher education institutions in Assam, the problem will be, with the secondary school, because most of the colleges in Assam, bearing the ones which have came up much later, they have the 10+2 level of education still in the colleges. Lalit Chandra Bhorali College also has got this 10+2 level. Now, what will happen if, this National Education Policy 2020 implements this and says that you have to do away with it? So that is one thing. And this 9, 10, 11, 12 will create a lot of problem, not only there, but also in other schools as well, because many of the schools, they don't have this 10+2 level. They end with +10. So in different ways, this is going to be a very, very important development, which we all have to see. And it's going to affect all the colleges, all the institutions that way, because when we talk of higher education institutions, colleges form the biggest chunk in Assam. And that is why this 10+2 level of education being clubbed with a higher secondary level of education will in fact require very careful handling. And in this, everyone will have to, in some way get involved. So there are, for example, many things. I'm not going to touch upon everything. I like one thing about the evaluation, what is being said about the evaluation in school, that it will be a sort of 360-degree evaluation, a sample-based National Achievement Survey, NAS, of student learning levels. And it will continue to be carried out under National Assessment Center for School Education. There is something called Parakh. Parakh means this evaluation will be done also by the students themselves. They will assess themselves. So Parakh means performance assessment, a review and analysis of knowledge for holistic development. So this is something really, I should say, a development which will again affect the entire system, because once the students go through this type of evaluation system, structure, the UG degree structure, it will be available in 3 and 4 years duration. So there will be TDC courses which we already have. We will be having the TDC, and we will also be having the 4-year degree course, and with multiple entry and exit options. So as I'm telling these things, as we are going along, please also try to imagine your own situations in your own colleges, what the thing will look like. So 3-year undergraduate degree, there will be multiple entry and exit. That, in other words, a student can exit. Supposing they complete 1 year, they can exit and then they go off. They will be getting credit for that, and for that there will be an academic bank credit. Or it's like, the students will be carrying with them a bank account. They will be having an account with them. So academic bank of credit. So against every student there will be credits, and they can go out of the first year with the credit.
Sir, can you hear me? We have to wait for some time. Yeah. Sir, please join the audio. Ma'am, Sarok eta phone kori koi diok, join audio to kori lobo karne.
Oh, ঠিক আছে তেওঁ আউট হৈ গ'ল নেকি আকৌ স্যার
Yeah, no need to call. Already he has unmuted. Yeah.
ওকে
Sir, please unmute yourself again.
নেটৱৰ্ক আজি বহুত প্ৰবলেম কৰি আছে যেন পাইছো
Hi, hi. Yes, sir. I think you can hear me, sir.
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay, sir.
Oh, I don't know actually where I left off. Anyway, so
Yes, sir.
basically I was talking about the 5 plus 3 plus 3 plus 4 years of education. I was talking that that the 4 years that the higher secondary stage will be problematic for our colleges in Assam because uh, you know they are in fact actually they should have been done away with earlier, but it seems they are with us. And then how to actually delink it, how to and where will these students go? That is again a big challenge because you need to create the capacity where these students can be in a way accommodated. So then I was just talking about, am I audible now?
absolutely
Okay. I hope from now on there is no problem. So I'm so sorry. I
no
can't
no
help
no
it.
no it's not your not nothing for you to be sorry
So anyway, so I was just you I think I did not talk about this academic academic bank of credit, did I?
no
I was talking, but I think it was, yeah, it went off. Anyway, now relax and imagine your TDC students. They get admitted. They study for 1 year under the new education policy. If it is implemented like that in toto with the new regulations, it will be like students will be getting admitted into the first year, And then if they want, they can go out of the system, and then they can carry the uh, credits with them. They will be having one account, the academic bank of credits for students. So with that, they may come back again to join in at a later date. So for the first year of completion, they can be awarded one certificate. For the second year, a diploma, and for the third year, if they complete it, it will be a degree, which they will take away, and then they will pass out. So and of course, these regulations have to be made as to when they can come back and complete it. And most interestingly, this flexibility is not only, it also, and it is also recommending a institutional flexibility. That's what I'm saying, that if a student does the first year in LCB college, they may want to go, and they may apply for B Borua college for the sorry, for the second year, and may complete the third year in Pandu college. Whether that will be feasible or whether that will be workable, it's for time to say. But at the moment, there is the you can say, as part of provisions of the National Education Policy 2020, one can do that. Of course, they can also go around the country and complete it. They can carry this, credits, and even go outside the country and seek admission elsewhere. So these are the advantages. This is actually very, very student friendly, as has been said. So there will be, of course, the 4-year degree course also. And the 4-year degree course will have, first year, second year, third year, and the fourth year will be, basically, it will be like an honors degree, where there will be an advanced, you can say, research sort of training will be given during that period. So, and 1 credit will be 1 hour of teaching, 2 hours of practical fieldwork will amount to 1 credit. These are certain things which have already been done, or you can say we are implementing that. So maybe the transition may not be very, very difficult. But let me tell you, this is actually a sort of, we are learning it from the degree system of USA, where there is a 4-year degree course. You have the freshman, you have the sophomore, you have the junior, and the senior. So these are, this is how they do it. And in the senior, they have the major. So it's not only structurally and the process that has been recommended, or it's there in the policy, which makes it flexible, but there is also a lot of flexibility in terms of curriculum. Now, after doing this, after passing out of this 3-year degree course or 4-year degree course, they will go to the university. They can join the university, and in the university, they will have to, if they want to do a master's, the ones who have done 3-year degree course will have to take 2 years of master's degree course. So 3+2 structure will be there. And for the 1+2+3+4, that is 4-year degree courses, for them 1 year will be enough for their master's degree. So in a way, finally, the amount of time which is taken for the masters will remain the same. 3+2 is equal to 5, 4+1 is also is equal to 5. But I think the most, and of course, there is another thing as far as higher education is concerned. They have done away with the MPhil degree. So there will be no MPhil degree. Though from the perspective of a university, I can say that MPhil is not, a degree that should have been treated in this way, because MPhil degree also, in a way, helps students prepare for rigorous research as well. And it is time bound, it takes a less of time, and they can prepare for a bigger research later on as a doctoral student. So maybe I don't know why this decision was taken, but perhaps MPhil could have been, or should have been made a part of the policy, but this will be discontinued as it appears. Then there will be, most importantly, I would say that there will be, the silos will be broken. The separation between science, arts, commerce, technology, or you can say the STEM, that is science, technology, engineering, mathematics, and the liberal arts. So this partition will no longer be there. So there will be, the silos, compartmentalization will be broken. So art subject, like, if you say of liberal arts, whether it is the English literature, philosophy, languages, history, or social sciences like sociology, political science, economics, or creative art like music, theater, uh, speech or writing. You can say soft skills. This will be all, it can be blended with hard science like physics, chemistry, biology, geology, astronomy, or botany. So this is, something. How far feasible it will be, but time will say. But I think this is a very, very welcome move that students will be getting this liberty of taking subjects from a wide. It's a bigger basket, you can say. But it's not that this is again also happening for the first time. Why I'm saying this is that we have been talking for a very, very long period of the cafeteria approach. Cafeteria approach is actually this approach. And also let me tell you that, I told you about uh, the entry exit points, or you can say that multiple entry, multiple exit. It's not that, it has not been there in different courses. I mean to say that there are courses. I can tell you of two courses under Dibrugarh University, where for the first year you get a certificate, for the second year you get a diploma, for the third year you get a degree. That is to do with BA in performing arts. That is what is done there. And then there is another course which is called a diploma in tea and agro studies. So tea and agro studies, there are two certificate courses actually. It is a one-year program. You can do half of it. You can do, for 6 months, you do it, you will get a certificate. You can go away and then again come back. You can go away and then again come back to complete the rest of the part within 3 years, and then you can get the diploma. In Guwahati University, very recently, there was a course which was introduced in law, postgraduate diploma in basics of law. In fact, I was a student there. It is actually open for. It's a course which is open for only employed persons. There were two principals of colleges, Hiranya Sharma and Gozen Odhikari, the principal of Mirza College. He was also there. There were three deputy registers from IIT. So yeah, I was also doing that course. That is again, you see, a multiple entry, multiple exit. You can do the course for 6 months, you do it and you can go out, and then you can come back to complete the rest of it. So what I mean to say is that there are attempts, there have been attempts in Assam itself to do this type of course, and maybe as we go along, this will be helpful for us. This will be helpful for us to devise courses, and maybe make it in a way applicable in the context. Regarding administration and regulation, the National Education Policy 2020 says that the administration should be light but tight. I don't know how light can be tight, and this is actually in quotes that they have stated. The administration and regulation should be light but tight. But overall, you see there is a lot of centralization going on, and there will be an apex advisory body called the Rashtriya Shiksha Ayog. So there was something called the Central Advisory Board of Education, which have been functioning in the country from 1920s onwards. So it is something which was there from the colonial era. It has been serving the purpose, but now we are going to have Rashtriya Shiksha Ayog at the central level with a 30-member committee, which will be having two-thirds of that will be educationists. There will be a permanent secretariat of this Ayog, and there will be a Rajya Shiksha Ayog of a similar type at the state level. And MHRD will be renamed as Education Ministry. It has already been done. The president has given accent to that, and MHRD minister will be known as the Education Minister. In fact, it was like that before 1986 onwards only. It came to be known as MHRD. So human resource development was something that they thought at that point of time to be the right type of word, or you can say nomenclature for this ministry. Then there will be again Indian Education Service, which will be there. And we know in Assam, we have the Assam Education Service. Now, who are members of the Assam Education Service? There is no separate examination for that in Assam. Those who get selected to serve in the government colleges, they are considered to be part of the Assam Education Service. So now there will be one IES exam, perhaps at all India level. And like the IAS, these persons will be there to help this education system to. So in a way, I don't know, it's a mix and match type. It appears to be a lot of freedom given, but at the same time, there is also attempt to create a sort of structure to regulate it in a light but tight manner. Then there will be a national higher education regulatory authority. I have been telling you about this, about UGC, NCT, AICT, all these different bodies will be merged together to have a national higher education regulatory authority, which will be called as NEHRA. Then for funding, there will be a National Research Foundation. So these are very, unique attempts, but overall, I must state at this point that, having a National Research Foundation is not enough. You need to have fund for the foundation to be given. At the moment, we are hardly for research, our country, you can say, is allotting an amount which is less than half of what China is doing. I think that is sufficient to just give you an idea of what is happening. Then there is a timeline of implementation of this NEP. So 2021, there has to be this national curriculum framework for teacher education. Now, this is something which the government is very seriously taking up. We know that there are a number of colleges in Assam which have opened up B.Ed courses. They have been, in fact, told by the government or approved by the government to have the B.Ed courses along with the other TDC courses. So BA, B.Ed, and or BSc B.Ed, or maybe BCom B.Ed, these are the new type of courses which will be there and which will perhaps be a new, you can say, attraction for the students. And then there will be so school part will be more or less done by 2021, 22, 23. And then after that, as we go along, there is the, we have to the universal foundational literacy and numeracy for all by 2025. So anyway, these timelines are there, sufficient for me to only say that this policy takes to 2040. That is 20 years from now. 20 years from now, that is the year in which the entire, you can say, gamut of this national education policy will be implemented. Everything will be implemented. So by 2040, we will be all doing that. And then there is also the talk of increasing gross enrollment ratio, which is at the moment is around 26%, and it has to be increased by 50%. That means doubling by 2030. So 2020, Lalit Chandra Bharali College can think about increasing it to double the amount by 2030. You have 10 years in hand. So you can just imagine how to do that, how many more buildings you need to have, and whether you have the space for that. So these are actually the big challenges that will be there before us. And it's not only that, you need, not only, having only, increasing the capacity, doubling the capacity by 2030 is not enough. You will also have to have, you have the science and arts, for example, you need to have more subjects. You'll need to have maybe commerce along with that, and the other vocational subjects, which will which will have to be made part of that in order to fructify, or you can say to realize the ideals of the National Education Policy 2020. And by 2025, a university shall not have more than 300 affiliated colleges. Now, at the moment, we are having 3 universities in the state of Assam, Dibrugarh, Guwahati, and you can say Assam University, which are affiliating. Tezpur is not affiliating, other institutions are not affiliating. So both Dibrugarh and Assam University, their numbers are less than 300, so no problem for that. Gauhati University has around 350. So around 50, I think 50 will anyway go to Bhattodev University, which have been established. So the number will come down. But let me at this moment also tell you that there have been a lot of policies or lot of recommendations earlier also to bring down the number of affiliated colleges under one university. There was one committee, Gajendra Gatkar committee. Gajendra Gatkar committee had recommended that one affiliating university must not have actually more than 30 affiliated colleges. So if you want to have more than 30, you establish another college. So another university, so to say. So de-affiliating the entire system is something which is there, which have been, of course, talked about by the Kothari Commission itself. And it was emphasized also in the 1986 as well as in the 1968 national education policies. But so far, de-affiliation has not occurred to that extent. There was the scheme of autonomous colleges, which have been very, very prominently pursued by the UGC in the different plans. For example, in the 12th five-year plan, it was given, there was a target given to the universities that you have to de-affiliate 10% of your colleges. So if the universities would have de-affiliated 10% of the colleges gradually, we could have quite a lot of autonomous colleges by this point, at this point of time already. States like Karnataka and most importantly Tamil Nadu, they are having large numbers of autonomous colleges. So for them, this transition will not be a problem. This transition will not be a problem at all, because for them, autonomous colleges are very common for them actually. I think in Tamil Nadu, they are close to 200 plus minus. In Karnataka, there are at least more than 100. And you know what has happened in Assam. In Assam, you have only 2 autonomous colleges, both under Dibrugarh University. One is the Lakhimpur College and another is the Jagannath Burwa College, that is JP College at Jorhat. Now, just to share my experience, there was a time, I think it was around 2003-4, around that time, or 2-3, around that time, when the Honorable Vice Chancellor of Dibrugarh University, Professor Devdas Kakati, he actually declared that the university is going to give autonomy to 10 colleges. All these 10 colleges were invited and they were requested to take autonomy, but no one was willing to do that then. And there was a lot of activities which was done, but we must also understand one thing, that supposing today if Lalit Chandra Bharali College wants to become autonomous, they have to go through a lot of, I mean to say, there are a lot of norms which have to be passed. The NAC accreditation has to be high. The government must be willing to give you autonomy, including the university. So these things are there. Anyway, we have 2 autonomous colleges where states like Tamil Nadu they are having close to 200 or 200 plus autonomous colleges. And by 2035, all colleges currently affiliated to a university shall secure accreditation and become autonomous degree awarding college. So every college will have to be now prepared by 2035 to be an autonomous institution. And you know what an autonomous institution involves. You will have to have your own, I should say, own academic council, own board of studies. So all the different bodies or committees which are there in a university, or whatever the activities which are done by the university will have to be done by the college now. And single stream higher education institutions will have to become multidisciplinary. If there is a arts college, they will have to take up science, they will have to take up commerce. If there is a commerce college, they will have to take up arts, they will have to take up science and vocational streams. It will be like that. Entire higher education system, including professional and vocational, everything will be integrated into one system. So university, this term will replace terms like deemed university, affiliating university, unitary university, or you can say affiliating technical university. So like the ASTU, Assam Science and Technology University, these titles will all go. There will be all known by a single term, that is a university. Of course, there will be three categories of universities. There will be research universities, which will of course do research. So the focus of the academics there will be research. The number two category will be those universities which will be doing research as well as teaching, and there will be some of them will be only teaching universities. So maybe many of our colleges will become teaching universities. So research university and teaching and research universities may be a bit difficult. As I see it, of course, it's not that it cannot be done. And so what is the dream by 2040? By 2040, the dream is that all higher education institutions must become multidisciplinary institutions, and they shall enroll in thousands. So now that is the big thing. Why I am saying this is that over the years, how higher education has developed in Assam, we have almost colleges in every nook and corner of the state. They are necessary, no doubt. They are necessary, but they all give the same type of degree. The degree offered by LC Bharali College is the same degree which is also offered in a college in the Alupatti Chowk. And the same degree which is offered also by B. Borua College, and also is the same degree which is offered by any other college, Dolgaon College, or you see the heterogeneity of the situation is being somehow managed to a same type of degree. But when these are all let loose, when everyone becomes autonomous, when everyone becomes not a college but a university, just imagine what the situation will be like. By 2040, it's not very far off. It is not very far off. All these higher education institutions, they must become multidisciplinary institutions and shall have enrollments in thousands. That is what being stated in the National Education Policy 2020. Now, when you talk of enrollment in thousands, I don't know what is meant by that. And if the comparison is with other universities of other parts of the world, then really there is something we have to think about. For example, in Guwahati University, we have close to 5,000 plus minus students. Why everything taken together, within the campus, it's around we take around 2,195. That is actually the number that we have. Now, if you compare that with Cambridge is having 21,656 students. MIT 11,000. UC Berkeley University University of California, Berkeley, it is having 41,910 students. Just imagine the number. Peking University is having 32,777 students. Tokyo University 27,000 plus. Even Dhaka University is having 30,000 plus with its constituent colleges taken together. Oxford is having 23,000 plus. Berlin is having 31,000 plus. Delhi University is having close to 10,000 only. And if you compare it to one university where I did a course, even in Thailand, Chulalongkorn University, Bangkok, they are having 35,000 plus students. And I have seen the buildings. I have seen their dormitories, as they said, which are actually 13-story buildings, all fully furnished with a different state-of-the-art architecture and facilities. So there is actually, we have a very tall order that we have actually put in. We don't know how much we'll be able to achieve, but this is the, that this is the number. That means we have to increase, not only, doubling is not enough. Doubling is not enough. Doubling is less actually. We have to increase at least by 4 times, 5 times. And Guwahati University, perhaps if we want to become a university like, even Thammasat, which is having 33,000 plus students, or the Yunnan University in China, which is having more than 19,000, close to 20,000 students, we will have to grow by more than 10%. I mean, so 10 times, not 10%, 10 times we have to, So these are, of course, there is no harm in dreaming. I mean to say, policies are at some points of time, they are all actually, as I said early on, so sometimes they can be also treated as aspirational, standards that we have. But this is it that we have to do. And even the number of research has to increase. Today we have around 15 researchers per lakh of population, where China is having 115 students, researchers per 1 lakh population. So, these things are there in in this education policy. So, bringing, to tell you in brief, there are a lot of, good takeaways from this. So number one is, it is extremely student friendly. It is extremely student friendly. The programs, the courses, the multiple entry exit, the stress on holistic, integrated, inclusive, enjoyable and engaging education. I don't know what the term enjoyable and engaging means. This is something really very, something that again we can aspire for, that the students will enjoy, they will engage, and they can carry away the credits, they can move around the country, to do their education, to complete their education. There is a lot of stress on vocationalization right from school, right from schooling. The coding will be, taught to them, to the children from class 6, which is in fact a good thing, So, flexibility, multidisciplinary activity, creativity, critical thinking, problem solving, these are something which are being highlighted in this policy. And thinking individuals are someone which we all aspire for. These are our products, the products of the higher education system of India must be able to think. And this is what the Honorable Prime Minister of India, Narendra Modi, also emphasized on, that, there has to be thinking individuals. Though, of course, thinking also requires a lot of things, including a sort of atmosphere where you can think, including an atmosphere where dissent has to be respected, or without, dissenting voices, you cannot think actually. So anyway, these are other things. But, to tell you of a very small, anecdote. Acha, Kunjo, can you tell me about the time limit? I think I am going on and on.
No. You can continue for another 10-15 minutes.
Okay. I'll try to be as brief as possible, actually. Because, there are so many experiences, so I suddenly get carried away.
No, and the topic itself is very exhaustive.
What happened is that when I was in zoology from CNB College, Pukakhat, who got selected into one program, master's program in Oxford. So I had a very good rapport with him, very good, you can say, relation with him. So when he went there, I used to ask him about I used to ask him to send the syllabus, because for educationists, for people like us in India, we always go by that, prescription, as if, the syllabus, if we teach the syllabus, so things will be done. So I was asking about the syllabus, and he was not giving the syllabus because he did not have any. There was no syllabus. He had a mentor, and the mentor used to give him some books to read, and they used to meet on and off, and they used to talk over a cup of coffee and things like that. And finally, he told me one day that, when I was pressurizing him too much, that, we have the BOS which are coming, and then maybe if you send me a few of the syllabus, I'll be able to, put it on the board meetings. Then he finally said that it seems, sir, that there is no, clear-cut syllabus here. And then he also told me one thing, sir, that I have been repeatedly told by my mentor to think, to think. And then one day he actually told him that, you see, we need uh, thinking individuals. We don't want walking libraries. So you can well imagine, we don't want walking libraries, we want thinking individuals. That is, that sums up, you see, are the best graduate of our, I can proudly tell you his name, his Man Borua, none other than Man Borua, who is now teaching in Cambridge. He was teaching in Oxford earlier. And let me also tell him, he did not go to a formal school. That is another important thing. And that is the reason why he could read in a very flexible way, a lot of things before he went for higher education. So maybe there are a lot of learning. We can use these examples to improve ourselves. And then there is a lot of emphasis on the life skills, on ethics, and human and constitutional values. So in a way, liberal education is being promoted. We have to understand one thing, that after we adopted the we entered the neoliberal era, when there was this constant talk of creating competent professionals, that arts and liberal arts, so to say, they were a bit neglected. Now it seems that it is being again brought to center stage. And then there is also talk of public education getting some amount of emphasis. And we hope that 6% of the GDP will be well spent to do that. And in the primary stage, there is also talk of education in three language. The three language formula is being taken. And then there is also the, of course, I don't know whether foreign universities will come, but foreign universities, 100 top foreign universities, they have been allowed to come and set their campuses here. But let me also tell you one thing, that this proposal, or this, you can say, policy is already there. And nobody has actually set up campuses here. You cannot expect Cambridge coming up and setting a campus in India on the same footing. But I know that there are a lot of collaborations which are going on, especially collaborations with regard to you can say research that is going on. And there is a lot of emphasis also on internationalization and to restore the status of India as a Vishwaguru, because there is a lot of emphasis on the India's past. We had a very big system. There is a reference very early on in page number 1, page number 2 about the universities of Nalanda, Taxila, Balavi. These things are there, but we need to also understand that that context was quite different. And of course, it also means that we have the capacity, but then we have to also change the context to, to bring the changes, or to, you can say, realize the changes. So in a way, higher education institutions so far, they have been underfunded and over-regulated, you can say. They have been underfunded and over-regulated. And in some way, there is a lot of centralization. So NEP 2020, it promotes amongst all these, there is a hint of, I think, centralization, which I can see all along. We have to understand one thing, that countries like, for example, even Canada is very, very, it is considered to be a very, a country with a very good higher education system. They do not have a central authority. They're federated unit, the states, they determine everything. There is no sort of centralization there. And then, but under NEP, all the different structures which are being thought of, I think there is going to be centralization, and centralization has already been started in a way with the common type of syllabus that we have introduced, and the colleges, including LC Borali College, they are also teaching the CBCS. We don't have the the liberty of having our own syllabus. The syllabus is prescribed from the center, so to say, and we are actually only implementing it with some amount of flexibility to the extent of 20 or 30%, which you can do on our own. But then this centralization is something which is there. So basically, I see there is a lot of risk also in terms of there are a lot of challenges in terms of this autonomy. So how far autonomy against, if you look at it against the centralization tendency, how much autonomy will be given to the institutions, the institutional autonomy, or you can say the autonomy at the instructional level. So the students which you are teaching in this LC Bharali College, they are not the same students which are being taught in some other parts of India, because it's a huge country with a lot of, you can say, variation. There's a lot of diversity which is there, and how this diversity will be accommodated when you have a similar type of centralized curriculum. I don't know whether that will actually lead to our creativity, our thinking individuals, or whether it will again become what has been very famously said, Rapta Marke. And you all have seen the film, Three Idiots, which have actually very nicely highlighted many of the ailments of our higher education system. So, and the politics is there, politics and the eternal urge to control the education institutions through the governing body, through the representatives of the state. These are all there. And where is the teacher's autonomy? This is actually very, very basic for CBCS. This is very basic. So many of the decisions, which college will get, for example, the science stream, these are not asked. The university is not made a part of it. It is being done by the state itself. So these are there, and I think the biggest risk is partial implementation. The biggest risk is the partial centralization, partial implementation. From 1968 onwards, every education policy have been implemented to some extent, not fully. So there is this, if supposing, if only the school is done and the higher education is not done, what will happen? Or if only the higher education is done and the school 5 plus 3 plus 3 plus 4 is not done, what will happen? These are type of, situations that we may, in the distant future, we may actually encounter. And in the process, maybe the private institutions will be in a better position to implement these policies. So, as I said, over centralization, I think I did not tell you that, it was a state subject. I told you about what is happening in Canada, but in India also, education was a state subject. In 1976, it was made a concurrent list. It came into the concurrent list. And today, this NEP, it makes it appear that as if it is slowly moving to the central list. Though it is in the concurrent list, it appears that, it is there. And then these foreign universities, there is no talk of, any regulation. Who will regulate them? There is no question about that. Nothing is there in the NEP 2020. So, and the INDIC hint, which many are talking about, there is a hint of, communal bias. I won't say, I don't see communalism in this National Education Policy 2020, but it is very interesting to note also that, amongst the classical languages which are there, we know Sanskrit was there, Pali and Prakrit, they are being talked of, and along with Persian. Persian is considered, Persian is now a classical language. I don't know how it has become a classical language, and Odia is a classical language. Tamil, of course, is. I realize Tamil is a classical language, but I don't know how Odia is a classical language. So if Odia can be a classical language, I don't know how Bengali cannot be, or whether Assamese can be. So these are certain gray areas where I think there may be question, and linguistic questions has got very, very strong tones which are there. Their language there. You find Thai language there. You find Korean there. You find Japanese there. You find Chinese there. But Arabic is not there. We all know that Cotton University has got an Arabic department, Guwahati University has got Arabic department, and there are many colleges in Assam that has got Arabic department. But this Arabic does not figure anywhere. I don't know for what reason, though it is a language which is spoken, which is actually the official language of 22 countries. And it is spoken in not less than at least 40, 45 countries. So I don't know. These are certain things which actually can be, which are observable. So there is also the question of 64 kalas and bringing in Sanskrit education in every stage of this NEP. So this is something that we may have to think about later on. Actually, we'll just see what happens in the process, whether it is doable or whether in the process.
Sir,
So please unmute yourself.
Creating more.
network problem hoya se, sir.
What I'm trying is that there are problems in our. Is any problem? I'm just finishing. I'm just finishing.
We can't hear you actually.
What has happened?
You come a little close to your mobile phone.
Is it there or gone?
It's there, it's there.
Okay, I think the video somehow, there's a call actually. Anyway, so it is a colonial legacy, and we have inherited a very, very strong command and control system in higher education, which is actually in higher education, you cannot have a command and control system. Otherwise, how can you create thinking individuals with a command and control mechanism where the attempt should not be create a person with one-dimensional thought and one-dimensional, you can say, mind. So there has been attempt to reform, and I think this new education policy 2020 is another sort of attempt to restructure higher education in India. But finally, we have to remember one thing, that education is not a product, it is a process. So long we have been treating it as a product, we have not been treating it as a process. And also we need to remember that education is not an island. Education actually reflects, or it interacts with the society, with the situation, with the context in which these education institutions function. We cannot have very liberal people, from these institutions. If going back from the institutions at home in the other, society, they learn something which is quite quite retrograde, or something which is not in tune with the you can say lofty desires and ideals of higher education. So this education policy is, in a way, we are trying to move away from the British education policy, which is there and which we inherited, and we are of course not coming something which from our own. That is what also I am the impression is, because nowhere in the, I could not see, if somebody has seen it, please point it out to me. There is no talk of Mahatma Gandhi. He is the person who critiqued the colonial education policy. He is the person who actually told that school education should always be in the mother tongue. But when we are talking of the same thing in the foundational course, I think Gandhi is forgotten. Gandhi is nowhere there. So I mean to say that it is again a tops-down type of approach that has been taken. It is not something, not enough emphasis is being given of a bottoms-up type of approach, which is, I think, very, very essential for any education policy. So, the parochialism, casteism, and other mental barriers which are there, which works in our, society, if this new education policy comes up with a system and process where we can overcome all of this and become free thinking individuals, where the mind is without fear and the head is held high, then I think the true ideals of the new education policy 2020 will be addressed. I think I will end here, and I thank all the members of the Lalit Chandra Bharati College, and especially the departments of English and Political Science for giving me this opportunity to share my thoughts with you. I apologize for the the problems which came in between, which also in a way actually I felt very you can say it troubled me also because I didn't get connected to you. So there's a lot of disruption. So in spite of this, we could somehow uh, talk about it. And I, therefore, for this to ACLA and to all the participants who are listening to this, I thank you for your patience. And I look forward, if there is any question and answer session, I'll be happy to reply to those. Thank you very much.
Yes. Thank you, Professor Hendik. We do not have much time left, so please brace yourselves up for just two very, very pertinent questions that have come. This is a question being put across by, just a moment. This is a question that has been put across by Dr. somehow, yes, by Dr. Rubab Nomani, who asked, how does this aspirational homogenization and centralization of higher education reconcile with the extreme diversification of disciplines, diverse socio-economic background of students in India? Like, for example, how can you compare and measure the outcomes in terms of credit points for the liberal arts, social sciences, and humanities? Sir.
That's so. Thank you, Rubab, for the question. I hope you are doing well. Actually, and this is a question which is because time to time travel to different colleges under Guwahati University. I have seen colleges under Dibrugarh University as well, and these colleges themselves are so diverse. And if you go to other states in the country, again there are a lot of diversity. So the point is, these diversities, instead of meeting it at the level of higher education, I think we should give more emphasis on school education. And when I talk of school education, uh, one thing that comes to my mind, and one thing which even my children they keep on telling me, is that we should follow the Finland model, because Finland is one country which was, in 1960s, it was ranked in the same stage with USA, but today they have moved ahead. That is the best country in the world, and in terms of school education, and this USA is now learning from them how to develop. Why I am saying this? Please don't, it may confuse you. It may confuse you because why I am doing this. Why I am saying that Finland can be adopted, because I think there is a greater possibility of giving or realizing the ideals at the lower level, because I think we have the competencies to do that. In Finland, in Finland, uh, to be a school teacher, even primary school, I'm not talking of high school, one needs to be a master degree holder. They have to have a postgraduate degree, a good postgraduate degree. They have to have training. They have to go through a very rigorous selection process, and then they become school teachers. And the schools that they have, it is in the schools that they learn to think. It is in the schools that they learn all the critical, because in Finland they are being taught to even question the knowledge which they are being given. So that is why I'm saying something which we are not doing it at the university level. They are doing it at the school level, and all the schools are publicly funded. All the schools are same. no one asks, no one thinks about which school they should send the children to, because they already know that all the schools are same and the neighborhood school is the best school. So what I'm trying to say is, because of the amount of resources that we will need to put into place the entire spectrum of suggestions, recommendations in the policy which there are, I think we should prioritize. And when we prioritize, uh, as Rubab have said, and I also agree that it will actually create some sort of anarchy if it is done at all levels at the same time. So it should start from below, and maybe do the maybe to some extent follow the Finland model, which actually happiness to us, which is very as far as National Education Policy 2020 is concerned, it's a huge document. There are a lot of things, but we should prioritize, and maybe the best point to the starting point would be the primary school education. That is the point. If we then start to move up, I think there will be less of anarchy and more of order. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, sir. This is the last question that we will take. We don't have much time left. This is a very, very direct and a very practical question, which I think most of us have. This is by Jamir Uddin Ahmed. He writes, how much do the certificates and diplomas that the NEP speaks about of will help the students in getting jobs?
Hmm. Well, that is something uh, exhaustively in this presentation, which is very, very important actually. Whether is it education which gives job? Is employability dependent on education? I don't think so. It is the same education which was there, which created, some same type of education for which people used to get job earlier. And today, supposing we try to change our system to create job opportunities, or you can say to fit it into the job opportunities. There is a very interesting study which says that, sorry, 30 years from now on, 30 years from now on, the jobs which you find today will not be there. So employability, jobs, these are actually, they should not be connected to education in the way we are sometimes trying to do that. Generalist can also be, because you see, finally, there is also another study which tells that, by the time you retire, the studies, or you can say whatever you learned in the higher education, only 5% of that remains relevant. Rest of it is something that you have to learn on the way. So there is emphasis of making good learners. That is true. So we have to make good learners in the process, and that is what this policy should do. They cannot all the time think of some jobs and change the education system in that way, tweak it to produce those jobs. So it is not like we must not think. It is a post-industrial age, and that is the greatest lacuna, because in the industrial age you have the assembly line education. We are actually still doing that, the same type of books, the same type of methods of learning. They go to the school, they pass out, we put a stamp on their back, so you are HSLC pass. They go to class 11, class 12, again they pass out, we put another stamp, you are now ready for college. They go to college and they end up, maybe after doing the graduation, they end up in the university. And in the university, what happens? I don't think too many things have changed all along the way. Same type of, the books have changed, the classrooms have changed, the ambience have changed, maybe their friends have changed, but the type of education and the process of education which is given, it more or less remains the same. So you cannot create thinking individuals from this type of a situation. So, and employability, supposing today we invest a lot of money on creating some computer technicians. And in days to come, there is no requirement for those computer technicians. We require, some other jobs. Maybe we will require a lot of biotechnologists. Will we again change our education system? Is it possible to do it? Education system, even the countries that we are copying, they don't do it like that. They don't do it like that. And in Finland, that is what precisely they are teaching in the early, to the children. They are teaching them to be happy. They are teaching them to be critical. They are teaching them to be, respectful of others. They are teaching them also to, to learn, to tell stories. So I mean to say that higher education system that we are all dealing with will become very chaotic if if we are not careful and we try to just in a way respond to the demands of the market, job market. So it is not the job of the I have a strong reservation to those who say that we are creating unemployable graduates. So it is true to some extent because they are not good learners. And why they are not good learners? Because we have not taught them how to learn from the school stage. You cannot make them to be, good learners at your college or at the university, because learning how to learn has to start from early on. And that is why there has to be some integrated thinking all along the line from top to bottom. And I think there is a lot of churning going on. There is a lot of thought going on about this. And I hope that in days to come, maybe we'll be able to overcome quite a lot of these bottlenecks and maybe create the type of situation when our graduates will automatically become employable, or they will create employment on their own if we give them that, if we put the processor in their mind, to do that. Thank you. I think did I answer it properly, or
Yes, you've done justice to it.
okay?
All right. I mean, I believe this is one particular topic wherein, a 2 hour or a 3 hour slot is not sufficient to delve upon. It's a very, very exhaustive theme to study, to understand, and to discuss also.
And not with a resource person who gets carried away,
No, it's good to get carried away, sir. All right. Before we wind up for the day, let me just extend a vote of thanks. I, on behalf of the Department of English and Political Science, extend a heartiest thanks to our principal, Dr. Edison Ali, for his constant support in organizing this webinar. A vote of thanks also goes to the IQAC coordinator, Dr. Diba Borwa, for her untiring efforts and will to get this program see the light of the day. Our sincere thanks also goes to Dr. Birendra Pal, Secretary, ICT Cell, Assam College Librarian Association, for his unparalleled technical support and know-how. A gracious thanks to the two HODs of the Department of English and Political Science, Dr. Diba Borwa and Dibakar Das. And most importantly, and very, very significantly, a gracious thanks to an erudite teacher and scholar, Professor Rajiv Hendik, who took out some time for us to delve on the nuances of the new education policy. Thank you once again. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. And also, lastly,
Kunjo, I
yes,
also
sir.
offer my thanks to Dr. Edison Ali and to all members of the Lalit Chandra Bharali College family, to all the organizers who have made this possible, and to all the participants for the patience and their forbearance. Thank you very much.
Yes. And lastly, a very, very big thank you to all my colleagues across different institutions and from colleges and universities. A very big thank you for participating. Thanks also goes to all research scholars and also a very, very young and wonderful students from different colleges. Thank you once again. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you to Kunjalata Brahma ma'am. You also deserves a special thanks on this very important webinar that has been taken at the platform of LCB College. And thanks to the entire team of this organizing committee of this webinar. And special thanks to again to Professor Rajiv Pandit sir, in spite of his uh, some technical limitations, sir has tried his best, and at last we have organized this program in a very systematic way. So thanks to Professor Rajiv Handike sir for giving his very important time to us. And thanks to the participants, those who are listening us in the Facebook Live, in the Zoom platform. And being a host, I declare this national webinar as an. Thank you very much. Stay safe, stay secure till that. Goodbye. Thank you very much.
Thank you.